Craving the perfect holiday snack? Check out Farmer Bill's Biltong. Think beef jerky, but better. No sugar, no preservatives, just pure animal protein goodness. Crafted from premium grass-fed beef or bison and air-dried to perfection, Farmer Bill's Biltong is nutrient-packed, energy-dense, and perfect for an on-the-go treat or a standout snack for your next party. My favorite is the original bison, but the other flavors like the original beef, smokehouse, and spicy chili had me second-guessing that choice more than once. Visit FarmerBillsProvisions.com to grab a 1-pound slab or a variety pack and use code BIZBIT10 for 10% off. Farmer Bill's Biltong, don't be the 2-liter guy at this year's Christmas party. Welcome to the Business Bitcoinization Show, the show dedicated to helping you enrich your life and grow your business with Bitcoin, the hardest money on planet Earth. I'm your host, Josh Friedemann, and our guest today is Lyle Pratt. He's the founder of Vida, which is a service that helps you to filter out all of the messages that are wasting your time, making sure you're getting higher quality communications while getting paid for it. And let me tell you, I reached out to Lyle using Vida to see if he'd be willing to share about Vida on this podcast. If you want to take it for a test run after this interview today, you can scroll on down and send me a message. My Vida link is down below. And of course, before we get to today's interview with Lyle, we do have this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight. Sioux Falls Bitcoin runs a meetup out of, you guessed it, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They prioritize connecting local Bitcoiners, providing education, and encouraging the use of Bitcoin as a currency. The Sioux Falls area is known for its entrepreneurial streak as well as a focus on independence and self-sufficiency, making it an ideal location for Bitcoin adoption. Sioux Falls Bitcoin meets at 8 p.m. on the second Monday of every month. Locations vary, but you can get more info by following them on Twitter at Sioux Falls BTC or by visiting SiouxFallsBitcoin.com. Their Twitter is listed below, along with a list of other local Bitcoin meetups across the U.S. To find one in your area, click through to the list. You can find the closest meetup to you as well as the best person to reach out to for more information. Now, we're going to get to our interview with Lyle right after this. Business owners, unlock the benefits Bitcoin has to offer your business with the Bitcoin for Business Quick Start Guide. This 27-page guide highlights the 6 ways you can grow your business with Bitcoin. Check it out in the show notes. Lyle, welcome to the podcast.
Howdy. Hey, thanks for having me.
So I like to start off every single interview with a few questions that help us to get to know you a little bit better and give us some insight for our own lives. So you ready for these?
Yeah, I'm ready.
When and how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
Yeah, leading up to this, I was kind of going back to think about that. And I guess funnily enough, the first instance of Bitcoin I could find in my email and chat logs was from my dad back in 2010. And he was like, hey, maybe you should do something for this hackathon you're going to about Bitcoin. You know, it seems like it could take off. And I didn't really take him seriously and didn't do it. But that was probably, one of the first references I could find of encountering Bitcoin and sort of thinking about it in a more serious context. But, it's kind of one of those things you stumble upon it, off and on over a few years. In 2014, I built some box milk crate GPU miners, a few of those. And essentially we were mining altcoins with them, but we would auto swap to Bitcoin in real time as the coins were mined. So, I did some of that in 2014 and held on to those. I suppose I didn't really fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole until late 2015, early 2016, after it sort of became apparent that MTGOX wasn't going to kill the whole ecosystem, and Bitcoin was going to survive and not only survive but thrive. And I suppose the rest is history.
So question number 2 is this: what's an insight or fact about Bitcoin you wish everyone understood?
Yeah, I think if I had to boil this one down, it would be the fact that proof of work is the most efficient method we have for doing something like Bitcoin. I think it would prevent people from going down these false narratives of the efficiency gains of proof of stake, or even things like why you should use a blockchain and what a blockchain is actually useful for. Or not. I think if people understood that more, it would it would help out a lot of the broader narrative and a lot of the FUD, we deal with every day when it comes to politicians and things like that.
Question number 3, what's the Bitcoin resource you most recommend to other people?
Yeah, I think this one kind of depends, depending on who I'm talking to. Sometimes I recommend Thank God for Bitcoin, which I'm one of the authors of, with Jimmy Song and Breedlove and George and Jordan, and the whole group. Especially if they come from maybe a faith background, or maybe they're more interested in sort of, or maybe they have this idea that Bitcoin and money and everything about it is sort of immoral and only useful for greed or things like that. I'll recommend Thank God for Bitcoin. Sometimes if I think the person just needs like a podcast, I recommend the first podcast in Preston Pish's Bitcoin Basics with Breedlove. I think that's an excellent intro into sort of the deeper concepts of Bitcoin. And then if they really want some meat to grab onto, then perhaps the Bitcoin Standard.
Question number 4, beyond Bitcoin, what's the resource or idea that's been valuable to you or your business recently?
Yeah, I'm going to go with an idea for this. And I think the idea is that there is this massive shift in the broader economy toward the creator economy and the broadening of the creator economy. And I think, everything we've seen with COVID, the shift to remote work, and everything that brought, I think it's making it apparent that there's lots of individual talent and creators in the world, and people have sort of realized that now that they're not tethered to this physical place, perhaps their skills are not tethered in terms of the marketability of their skills, and it's leading toward this explosion of sort of individual creator talent, whether that's like streamers or, contract, programmers or contract marketing or whatever. I think that is going to continue to become a big theme in the economy, in the broad economy. And I think if you're building a business today, especially an online business, you have to be aware of that shift, because it's going to influence every customer that you come across, because every customer is going to sort of be a creator in their own way.
And our final question, we call it our arbitrary but insightful question, and it's this. As a general life principle, is it better to ask why or why not?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I guess I've always sort of been a fan of the old saying, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission in a lot of contexts in life. Clearly that can get you in trouble, but, a lot of people would do better by asking why less and just asking, why not more. But I think, part of becoming someone who is trained to identify asymmetric opportunities, sort of that they encounter in their lives, opportunities where the gain is high and the risk is low. Ultimately, you need to understand a lot of the why in order to be able to sort of quickly spot those patterns where it makes sense to just say, hey, screw it, why not? Let's do it. So, I guess why not is more action based and why is more conceptual or understanding based.
Meet Linkster, your premier Bitcoin-focused advisor. Linkster caters to businesses, institutions, family offices, and high-net-worth individuals. They merge your unique financial goals and needs with Linkster's Bitcoin expertise to craft your own sustainable plan to preserve and grow the value of your hard-earned profits and retained earnings. At Linkster, it's not just advice, it's tailored execution. Connect directly with the founder by visiting linkster.com. That's LYNCSTER.com. Linkster. Secure your future with Bitcoin. Today's episode of Business Bitcoinization is proudly brought to you by Velis Commerce, where the future of business technology meets Bitcoin. As we journey through the era of Bitcoin and its transformational impact on businesses, there's one name that stands out: Velis Commerce. Whether you're looking to build a cutting-edge website, a seamless mobile app, or custom software, Velis is your go-to team. They've been diving deep into the world of Bitcoin since 2014, making them one of the most experienced groups for integrating Bitcoin and Lightning payments into a variety of digital platforms. But here's what truly sets them apart. Velis Commerce doesn't just build. They bring a wealth of knowledge to ensure your project success from day one. Their team understands the nuances of Bitcoin, ensuring that your business stays ahead of the curve. And for all business Bitcoinization listeners out there, Velis Commerce is offering a free consultation to kickstart your project the right way. So if you're ready to future-proof your business in the coming age of hyper-Bitcoinization, head over to veliscommerce.com or reach out on Twitter at veliscommerce. Let's make sure your business thrives in the Bitcoin era. So Lyle, we're here today to talk about your new business, Vida. Could you share with us a little bit about the concept behind Vida and maybe how you got to this point? I know you have a career in tech. You have a long background with being at least aware of Bitcoin and as far as your involvement in the space, 2014 onward. So you're familiar with the space. Why Vida? Why now?
Yeah, why Vida? Well, I guess to boil it down, the Lightning Network exists now. I guess back in 2018, I was actually working on a project inside a very large telecom network to use machine learning to identify fraud and spam in the network faster. Because basically fraud and spam in a telecom network is an extremely costly thing for the network operator. And I was spending a lot of time trying to sort of build tools and build a team really to build tools to spot these trends, and traffic patterns flowing across the network. And, it was very difficult. And it became pretty apparent that, hey, if we could just settle the value of this traffic before it even traversed the network, as it traversed the network, then a lot of this fraud and spam would go away. And at the time, that's when the Lightning Network was kind of becoming a real thing, not just a paper. And that's when I kind of started thinking about the implications of being able to settle the value of people talking together one-on-one or messaging each other, one-to-one in real time. And, once your brain sort of starts going down that rabbit hole, you begin to realize, well, this has much more profound implications because if you can settle the value of the traffic in real time, then you can have individual prices for the network destinations. And ultimately, what are these network destinations? They're people like you and me who are, answering phone calls or responding to text messages. So, that kind of started me down this process. And basically, it's like, okay, if you can let anyone set their own price for their time and attention, and you can settle the value of it in real time, and the monetary aspect of the network is open. Anybody can sort of build tools to connect into the network. It sort of became obvious to me that somebody needed to build an application to begin to facilitate some of these use cases. So Vida today is pretty simple. It's an app where you can set a price to receive a phone call or a text message or to watch a live stream. And, there's a lot more coming down the pipes, a lot more tools to monetize your time or monetize the attention of your audience. But that's where it is today.
So maybe for a second, could you just name drop a little bit, explain to people who's on Vida so far? Because it's been a pretty impressive lineup you've been able to get in the early days of this service.
Yeah, I've had a lot of really awesome folks sign up and help me test. I'm calling it an alpha product right now. I've built the whole thing myself thus far. So, it's pretty rough around the edges, but I've been lucky to have folks like Jack Dorsey, signed up, Jesse Powell, the founder of Kraken, Jimmy Song, Robert Breedlove, Jack Mahlers, a lot of cool people that have signed up and set a rate on the price of their time. You can log in with your Twitter account and send Jack Dorsey a message right now if you want to, which is pretty, it's honestly, I didn't expect to get, such interest so quickly, but, I'm thankful for it. So, if you're listening today, it's as simple as logging in with your Twitter account, give it a shot.
Yeah, and it says vida.live. If you go there, you can see on the front page some top names in the space, including Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter and Square. And this might be some of the cheapest ways to get in contact with some of these people early on. So So don't be laggards here. There are people who have significant prices that they've set on their time on Vida so far, but some of these it's very affordable to get in contact with some top people. So maybe could you take us through some of the ways you've used Vida so far, and then maybe we can take some time to talk about how business owners can be thinking about using this either now or in the future.
Yeah, today it's real simple. If you have an audience or people that are frequently wanting to reach out to you, and you don't have any way to filter their interests or filter I guess I would generally say the signal from the noise. Vida is a good tool for you to use because ultimately price is the filter for the entire world economy when it comes to signal and noise, and that's why our current monetary system is so messed up because the price filters are so messed up. But with Vida, you can be very explicit and say, hey, if you want to talk to me on the phone about anything, this is how much it's going to cost you, and I'm happy and willing to talk to you at that rate. Same thing for a message. If you want to send me a message, if you want to make my phone vibrate, if you want to distract me, this is the cost. And Vida even has built-in tools to facilitate things like that. Like we have an automatic Twitter autoresponder. So you can click a button and turn it on. And if somebody sends you a Twitter DM, it sends them a message and says, hey, I don't often check my non-follower DMs inbox, but if you really want to get my attention, you can click this link and, send me a message for a few sats. So if you're a business today, the product is probably, going to be less useful for you today than it will be tomorrow, because your use case will need to sort of fit into those tools. But I can totally see use cases in the future where let's say a business wants to have a premium customer support line, and instead of just putting off hiring phone support forever because it's costly and it requires hiring people, and businesses oftentimes have a hard time justifying that cost, perhaps you should start with Vida today. Actually have a paid person to handle your support, and it's just cost whatever the nominal fee is to be able to support that support person. And maybe you should start immediately and have the time valued as it should be out of the box. But later there's going to be a lot of other tools for streamers and for stream monetization and things like that businesses might find appealing as well.
I'm curious about what you've seen so far. This is probably something that a lot of Bitcoin connected businesses, especially the kind of pay to play sounds like a bad way of saying it, but when you're paying for value, it's a little bit harder to sell people on that because people are used to things seeming free. Now, in our current setup, oftentimes we are experiencing costs, we just don't realize them. Inflation is a great example of this. But what do you think about the transition of getting people used to paying for value in the moment, as opposed to having that value maybe stolen from them in more silent ways?
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting transition. And I think it's going to be a big part of this transition into the broader creator economy, which I think another way to say that the creator economy is the value for value economy. And I know that's sort of a rising topic in Bitcoin spaces. Like there's the Fountain podcasting app, which is a value for value app. I would say Vida is a value for value, app as well. But you're right. Like people are used to free. They're used to having their time and attention indirectly monetized by third parties. If I had to restate that in a different way, like we use Twitter, we use Facebook. Facebook is literally monetizing our time and attention to offer you this free service. But the consequences of that are infinite spam bots. The consequences of that are, training people to do this infinite scroll thing, to increase the attention and the time spent looking at these advertisements. So I think there's, we're already beginning to see cracks in that business model. And I think Lightning is going to expand those cracks because we're going to get more applications and products and services that more directly create the content creator, which is an individual like you, with the content consumer like me. And as we more directly connect these people, the value flowing between these people is going to become more direct. And I think that happens out of necessity because, if you think about it, traditionally, podcasts are monetized through ads, right? Maybe pre-roll ads or things like that. But already the podcast advertising space is much more fragmented than the advertising space on broader internet websites like Twitter. And the reason is because the content producers are more disaggregated and decentralized. So it's more difficult for a big ad network like Google's ad network, to essentially monopolize all of the ad space, the quote unquote ad space, on all of this disaggregated podcast content. So it's beginning to sort of force these creators to approach and to try out new monetization tools, because it's hard to have advertisements unless you have scale. And so I think it's going to naturally sort of trend toward this value for value economy. I think if you have a business, I guess to wrap it up, if you have a business, that you perhaps an investor in, maybe a stock that is utterly dependent upon ad spending, I think over the next decade, those businesses are going to become more difficult.
Now, I'm curious about a couple things come to mind as you just been speaking. First of all, you mentioned that the Vida is sort of in alpha mode right now. Is there any cost for using Vida? I'm assuming that you have some costs that you need to cover. What does that look like as far as the monetization for your business and the cost for using either sending or receiving, in addition to whatever the set cost is for the person you're trying to reach out to?
Yeah, so there's no you don't have to pay a fee to start using Vida or to sign up for Vida. Essentially, Vida takes a cut of the value flowing through the network. By default, if you sign up today, the default rate is a 20% cut. But the reason for that is because by default, you have a custodial account. So in other words, Vida is holding the sats that you put into a wallet, to use to send. And, there's underlying costs for doing that. And also, I don't really want to encourage people to use the custodial product. So I have another way to connect your own Lightning node or to use something like Strike as your wallet behind your Vida account. And if you do either one of those, then the fees are cut to 10%. And, I'm totally sure that if you're a creator that's doing a lot of volume, then those are going to get compressed more over time as well. But yeah, essentially it's pretty basic. If you're using Vida to monetize your time or to send somebody a message, then Vida takes a cut of the value traversing through the network because we're facilitating the communication.
You mentioned creator economy, value for value. I'm curious when it comes to, I guess, you can sort of self-select if you're a creator. You're someone that people are trying to get in contact with. You're getting a lot of spam. You're not getting a lot of high quality messages. You want to increase that. Just sign up for Vida. And I'm a little bit curious about the CEO side of things, like the leader of an organization. Is their Vida account, is that something they could put like on their LinkedIn, their Twitter, and say, hey, this is the place to contact me now, instead of my Twitter, LinkedIn inbox, instead of maybe even going to my secretary, go to Vida instead? Is that how people should be thinking about it if they're a business owner, want to cut down that noise?
Sure, absolutely. If you're getting too much unsolicited inbound communication, right? The underlying reason why you're getting that unsolicited inbound communication is because there's no price to send it to you, right? Ultimately, the reason why you get spam calls on your phone all day is because it costs nothing to send the call to your phone. I think that the same is true for a LinkedIn message. The same is true for a Twitter message. The same is true for an SMS message. So I guess the big picture goal for Vida is to let people introduce a price filter into their into communication with them. The problem is a lot more visceral. The more of a following you have, or the more of a sort of a set of people in the outside world that are trying to get your attention. A CEO is a great example. An Instagram influencer, a streamer, an athlete, a well-known professional. All these people have lots of people that are trying to access their time, but there's no price filter to segregate the signal from the noise.
What have you noticed as far as price goes? Maybe you don't have a large enough population to gauge this yet. Some people, if you look even on the front page, Vida.live, some people have a really high price, some people have a really low price. Any recommendations on how to value that if you're leading an organization and want to cut down on the noise, but don't want to just totally eliminate business opportunities and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, everyone is sovereign over the price of their own time on Vida. And I'm not going to recommend someone set their rate. However, I guess I would say, you can always start low and, increase it as you go. I mean, here's the thing. If you're getting contacted too much on Vida, what is the answer? Increase your rate, right? That's on Vida, there is no spam because all the communication that hits your phone on Vida is communication that at the rate that you have set. So if you're getting too much of it, it's not that it's spam, it's that you need to increase your rate to essentially make the filter a little more fine, so it filters a little more of the noise out and gives you more signal. So you can start at whatever rate you want, increase it as you go.
And then I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but I'm sort of curious. Let's say someone's, let's say you're a CEO, someone sends a message to you, you read the message, and does it cost for you to respond, or how does it work for the person on the receiving end?
Yeah, that's a great question. So messages are a little bit unique in that if somebody sends you a message, it starts what's called a conversation, and you are free to respond in the conversation if you didn't initiate it. So if somebody initiated the conversation with you, it's still going to cost them money to continue to send you messages, but you can respond for free. And at any point, either of the parties can close the conversation, to sort of reset that dynamic. Also, the conversations will expire after about a month, currently is what the setting is. Okay. The person reaching out to you continues to pay, but you don't pay to respond.
And the last thing on this line of thinking, I'm curious about whether or not you've thought about what this would look like within an organization, because unfortunately, this is probably coming from the top down rather than the bottom up, but there are so many times that you get emails that you just don't need, or just all sorts of communications. Have you thought about what it would look like to use this inside of an organization? Is that a possibility, or would that be too, I don't know. I'd just be curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity, to expand more into that use case over time. For example, I could see companies wanting to be able to set the rates for employees in their organization, in certain contexts. So imagine they're using Vida as a support tool, a paid support tool, and an organization might want to be able to control the rate for sort of a subset of users that are receiving calls for a specific topic. So there are things like that. I could see, situations where, you need to be able to hand a conversation off. So there's a lot of sort of deep business UX things that could be built on top of that. How much we delve into that in the Vida product in the near term, is up for debate. There's a lot of great tools out there already for handling, business messaging conversations. And I don't really think that it makes a ton of sense for Vida to sort of compete on that use case, but perhaps Vida should integrate, into those systems instead. So that's sort of how I would think about it.
So this is best used for someone public facing. So to your point earlier, a creator or a CEO who's getting inbound from people beyond the organization.
Yeah, I'd say so. Today, I don't really plan on Vida to compete, like with things like Signal. So, perhaps, you receive a message from someone, you get the conversation started, you sort of understand the reason for, continuing the conversation. And if you, want to sort of move the convo outside of the context of Vida and its paid messaging system, you can always give them your Signal or your real phone number or whatever you need. But, for now, I think Vida is focused on sort of this initial outreach, inbound communication.
Well, before we finish up, I'd love to hear anything that you're willing to share about things that are in the near term, future developments for Vida that people could be expecting in case they may not have the large following that would make sense right now for a creator, but they're thinking about how can I use Vida in the future? What are some things you're thinking about developing and have maybe in development already?
Yeah, I think one of the big things coming down the pipes is more streamer monetization tools. So, today you can receive a phone call, at your rate. You can just receive a message at your rate. You can stream through the Vida platform itself. So somebody will need to pay whatever your rate is to watch the stream on Vida. But there's tons of content creators, who are creating video podcasts, or maybe they're just streaming video, and they need ways to monetize their audiences as well that are not necessarily consuming the content on the Vida platform. And so Vida is going to offer quite a few monetization tools. Essentially, I guess I would describe it as a QR code that is overlaid on top of your streams, whether those are live or pre-recorded. And if anybody scans the QR with any phone, it doesn't have to be a Bitcoin wallet or something like that, just any QR scanner, they can pay to, for example, post a live message on your stream. Or if they scan it after the fact, like maybe it was a pre-recorded podcast, they're going to get brought to a page specifically to start a conversation with you, which is another way to sort of, monetize an audience after the fact. Maybe somebody has a question about a podcast, and it sort of keeps it front and center on their minds, as they're consuming your video content. So I think that's going to be a very useful tool for creators with existing audiences, or for creators who are building new audiences with video content.
Well, Lyle, I'd love for you to share any final thoughts, as well as places for people to go. We've already mentioned it throughout this episode, but places for people to go if they want to check out Vida and stay up to date with its latest developments.
Yeah, Vida.live is the web address. You can sign in with a Twitter profile. It's super simple. You can find me on Twitter at Lyle Pratt, LYLEPRATT, and Vida's account is at VidaIsLive. But yeah, give it a shot, try it out. The app has been live for, I guess, about a month and a half now, maybe a little over that. So it's still very early. If you encounter issues or if you have suggestions, hit me up. I'm kind of shifting more into building out the broader core team, but still slinging some code every day. So let me know if you find something.
All right, Lyle, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Sure appreciate it.
All right, friends, it's a wrap. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Business Bitcoinization Show. If you want to reach out, our email is info@bizbitshow.com. Also, if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and scroll on down to the show notes. There you'll find ways to connect with me and our guest, as well as our excellent sponsors who can help you succeed in your life and in your business. Keep building, keep growing, and until next time, keep living and leading well. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, thank you. If you want to take a further step in your support for the show, you can help us grow by listening on Fountain, a value-for-value podcast app on iOS or Android. If you hear something you like that you disagree with or anything else, you can share it by sending some sats and adding a comment with your thoughts. Some of you have already done this, and I appreciate it. I'm going to begin reading your boosts on upcoming episodes, so if you have some insight or value to add, let the people know. Getting started with Fountain is easy. You can add Bitcoin to your Fountain wallet by using your fiat accounts or any Lightning wallet. And one of my favorite features is that once you're using the app, you can earn sats just by listening on Fountain. Check out the link in the show notes to get started with Fountain today.